the ripple effect that this can have on what Brad Treliving and company are going to try to do next. Because Treliving, when he got here, like one of the first things he really tried to hammer home was that he's trying to get rid of the core four. He wants it to be about the team and not about the individual players. I don't believe this contract does that because it still suggests that Matthews is acting differently than other superstars around the league.
But because
he didn't take the 8 years.
Of the core four, he is the core.
Yes.
So I don't think we know until the next move.
I agree with you, and I think that's where I was trying to get to here. I think with Matthews, Treliving's hands were largely tied, and he was going to try to get as many years as he could and get the cap as low as he could. And I'm sure he pitched Matthews on both. Matthews listened. They came to terms on a 4-year extension. Let's not forget, he's got another year left at 11.6. Yep. So he's here for 5 more years. You've played on a lot of great teams. I'm sure there was the one guy that was different than everyone else. And I'm sure even in the room you understood it. I'm sure you got to Boston, you realized that guy wearing 77, probably a little bit different than everyone else. In terms of the way you would expect management to handle him.
Probably number 8 more than 77.
Really? Cam Neely more so than Bork?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I find, like, was it considered in Boston Neely was the better player?
No.
More important player?
No, different. I think just different. It was like he had come into the Bruins and excelled far beyond, whereas Bork was just like, Bork had the complexity of being the Bobby Orr replacement.
Right.
With Brad Park in between, and he fulfilled it.
Right. Well,
he was almost more institutionally a Bruin than Neely was. Neely grew into it. But from a contract standpoint, if you said, like, Ray wasn't going to hold out, Ray wasn't going to.
You just knew he was going to be there. Yeah, exactly.
And they were going to make sure he was.
Well, and that's, I guess what I'm saying is that's kind of what's happened here with Matthews. And
Matthews is more Bork.
Matthews is the institution. He's the marquee guy. He's synonymous with being a Maple Leaf. Not that Marner is not that Willie isn't, not that Tavares isn't. And Tavares is different. He's got 2 years left. Everyone knows he's not making $11 million. But I don't know what his future is in Toronto, but he's here for 2 years. He's going to get paid. He'll be their captain, so on and so forth.
So that is one step of the core four.
So what happens next?
That's one step of the core four.
Because Tavares, again, isn't going to change in 2 years.
No.
But Willie is a year away. Marner is a year away from being able to negotiate an extension. Do you think they go at those two differently than they did Matthews?
I do.
Because they didn't really the last time.
They did not. And it's a different group, and I would think they would learn from that. I mean, it hasn't worked. And you're going to get another year to see if it does work. And you might get 2 more years with Marner and Matthews together to see if it does work. But if at the end of 2 years, Marner hadn't resigned and it hadn't worked, Tavares is leaving, not sure what happens with Willie. I mean, at some point you have to look around and say,
can you see a world in 3 years where only Matthews is here?
I could. It'd be a major trade involved, or maybe 2. It would be 2. Something would happen with Willie, and if it hasn't worked with Marner to that point and Matthews together, why wouldn't you change? You just keep rolling.
I mean, it's been 7 years and they haven't changed,
right?
So in 2 years, they're finally going to determine
the general manager.
Yeah, although Shanahan made it quite clear he didn't want to. That was more Dubas that decided I'm changing.
But it changed.
It did change, yes.
So that's the first thing that changed. Once again, I look at the calmness that's happened when Brad Treliving took over. It was just like it or not, it was a calm, steady hand.
Yeah.
And he got the deal done. I'm intrigued to see where it builds out. I really am.
Yeah, and I think, again, it begins with the other, as much as Brad, and I understand his philosophy here, and I think he's right, But the fact is he can't control it because
the alliteration works too well. Anytime you try and include Morgan Riley in the conversation, the
he doesn't even get included.
Core 4 doesn't work.
Right. And meanwhile, he's the longest standing guy. He's their number one defenseman, which is a more important position than your second line right winger every single day of the week.
I bet you a lot of people would have a hard time even telling you what his contract was.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. In terms of the actual dollar amount,
we
and
all
how
know
long
the other
signed.
ones to a $1.
Everyone knows the rest of them. So I understand where Treliving is coming at and why he wants to change it, but it's not going to change until one of them either leaves or the organization approaches it differently. And the fact is that couldn't happen with Matthews because he's core 1. Yes, he's a part of the core 4, but he's really core 1.
He is core 1.
And so they were in a different place with him. The problem is Marner believes he's core 1A. Mm-hmm. And that is my concern with what Matthews has decided to do here, is that in this era, generally the players have the responsibility of establishing the salary cap culture. As much as that may not seem true, and you would think it would be incumbent on management to do that, every manager would prefer, the famous Lou Lamoriello, it's too long, too much money.
Too much money.
Every GM wants you to sign for the league minimum for 1 year. That would be ideal. That doesn't happen naturally.
But it has to start with a player, and if that is Patrice Bergeron or Sidney Crosby saying it's good luck because it's number 87 and I make $8.7 million. What if he had number 98?
Oh.
Is that...
Yeah, no, I understand.
What's Connor Bedard say?
But those are examples.
Good luck. It worked for Sidney. It's good luck.
Yeah.
My number's not 87. It's 96.
But generally speaking, that the successful teams have had
they've
had players who have decided we are going to establish our own limits here, and
since 2005.
Yeah, and again, I think that's it sucks for the players, and it's an exclusively NHL issue that the owners have created here with a hard salary cap that has absolutely no leniency and no flexibility whatsoever. And then you throw a pandemic on top of it, it makes it even more complicated.
The compression was...
But the players generally dictate the salary cap culture. And what Matthews has dictated here was he's not going for 8, and he wants another big one in 5 years or 4 years. Why would Marner and or Nylander listen to Brad Treliving suggesting he needs a different salary cap culture when the big dog decided this is how it's going to be?
You better hope the cap's going up a lot. I mean, that's the one saving grace.
Yeah.
It's going to go up.
Which it will, as long as we don't get hit with another pandemic. Knock on wood, we should be fine. Money's going to go up.
Yes.
But I guess what I'm getting to is the Leafs at some point have got to put their stake in the ground. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't going to be for Matthews, and it can't be for Tavares because the ink is dry. He's got 2 years left at 11.
One of the two remaining players is happening before the
Nylander or Marner. I think it's got to be both, quite frankly. Because as much as I love Mitch Marner as a player, he is not 1A.
Well, in that case, I think the Leafs are fortunate that Nylander comes up first. Because they get to put the stake in the ground with him.
Yeah. Well, and I've been saying this for months. If it takes all year, so be it. And if it takes all year and he walks, so be it. I think you're establishing a philosophy and a standard is incredibly important with this team.
Well, when I was asked about that, though, with Nylander, and it's hard to establish the standard from the bottom up of the core 4. And he's by far the bottom up.
Yes.
And, he thinks he's taken his hit over the last 4 years. He's taken his hit for the last 5 years.
Compared to...
On a relative basis, compared to the guy sitting across
in the room. But not the rest of the league.
Who we scored more goals for him last
year. Not the rest of the league. And what I think Willie, and I'm sure Willie understands this, and his representatives understand this, if you hit the open market doesn't care.
No.
The Toronto standard.
No.
They don't care. They're not going to pay you $10 million because Mitch Marner got something.
Not getting 90% of it in a signing bonus.
No, and you're not getting it. You're not getting 90% on July 1st for the next 6 years. You may not get a full no trade, no move.
Those July 1st numbers look good for Matthews.
They look exceptional. And listen, I credit the Leafs. They have the money.
Yeah, it's your one advantage.
Go for it. You might as well use it. And that's something I'm sure they're trying to use with Willie. We'll pay you everything you need on July 1st. But that's a huge benefit to being here.
Enormous.
In order to do that, though, we're not going to treat you as if you're better than Sebastian Aho because we paid Mitch something and made a mistake on that. Or went through it the last time with Auston and made a mistake on that. Treliving has got to rectify the issues of the past administration. The thing is, Shanahan's still there. He's still in the room, and he was a part of it. So Shanahan, I'm sure, has to rectify it too. He's got to be driving the bus here.